Hey, this is Samir again, and I would like to show you the first important component in the Effex 2.0 framework. This will be the volumes. Now, I would like to take a closer look at what a volume actually is so you understand the ground truth of the framework. We will see volumes in any setup as they're used as emitters or for modeling or for fall-offs. So they have multiple purposes, and so it's good we take a look at this at first. Let's just start right away, but as this is the first tutorial on the framework, the first thing I have to point out is that for anything you do with the framework of Effex, you need an Effex scene. So let's just create an Effex scene here. If we look at the settings, we can see that these are just a few global settings that define how the simulation scene that you are about to create, or maybe it's just a modeling scene or whatever you do with that framework, it will have a certain simulation space unit. For example, we see here that 100 centimeters, so the current C4D units are equal 1 meter in Effex units. So if I create a cube that is 200 centimeters wide, then this would be in the Effex scene units. It would be 2 meters. And this is just a one-to-one conversion because I do work in centimeters all the time. If you are, for example, working in meters, then you would probably set 1 meter. So 1 meter in C4D units would also be 1 meter in the Effex unit. So these are the first things you should take care of, just defining the physical space of the framework. But it is 100 centimeters for me and 1 meter, so I just keep that. It's not actually necessary, you just have to be aware of the conversion. And if you keep it 1-to-1, you don't have to care about anything, you just can care about the units that you see in Cinema 4D. And then we have a lot of stuff that works with three-dimensional grids. Each grid cell, of course, then also has a certain size, and you can define that one here in this setting, either for the editor or for the actual final rendering. You can have them separate if you want to. I always do that, of course. In the editor, I keep a lower resolution to keep it faster, and for final rendering, I would, for example, set double the resolution or whatever. We have a global gravity setting here for any liquid simulations, for example. We have a global seed, so whenever there is something random in the scene, you can give it a different seed by changing this global seed. Then we have some settings that concern the timing or the time, because in any dynamics framework, time is an integral part of it, of course, time and space. As it is for Cinema 4D, we have the space, the three-dimensional space, and we have the timeline, so to animate. And that's actually the same in the Effex framework. It may just encounter different stepping times for fluid simulation, for example, etc. And we can set different sub-steps here for the framework, so it all stays inside the same ground truth. So with whatever object you put in here and that acts on each other or on itself, these are the base settings for it. And we can also set CPU threads that you would like to use. By default, it uses all CPUs or all cores that you have in your computer. Alright, so the Effex scene actually only contains global settings. Well, that was necessary now to explain to you. Let's get to the volumes now. Actually, I already created a volume here, which is this cube mesh. And it's a good thing to explain a volume, because a cube has an outside. We can already see this is the outside, and a cube also has an inside. If I had a plane object, for example, let's just create a plane and get rid of the cube here visually. I can't move inside of it because it's just a surface. So if there's no inside, there can be no volume. Maybe you remember your math classes where we had to calculate the volume of a certain object. Well, it's just that. You know, you have to have an inside and an outside. So I can't use a plane, but I can use a cube. You know, and so let's create a volume. Well, perfect. Cinema 4D, like this, and now I create a volume. And now that I've created it, it doesn't do anything yet. And let's just assign the cube now here in the volume settings. And I have a field, a link field saying mesh object. Well, that fits. I do have a mesh object, which is the cube. And it also defines a volume. So I put this in here. And we still don't see anything. And the reason is that every object that you use in the Effex framework has to go into the Effex scene. Boom. And now we can also see a difference visually. We now get that purple line here at the edge of the cube. And when I just deactivate the cube, I can see now that the volume, that it shows me the inside area of the cube and not the surface anymore. And that's what the volume does. It converts this surface mesh, actually, because a cube in Sim 4D does not really have an inside. It just looks as if. So it has to be converted to a real volume as Effex defines it. And that's simply done by placing it here. And we can now see the inside. Well, actually, maybe I take a sphere now because that's also a volume. Wow, what a surprise. And I just replace it and get rid of the cube. Because I would like to show you something concerning the grid. Because a volume is actually defined on the grid. You know, and that's how we can see the stepping here. Because you could imagine these are grid cells. You know, in each grid cell, we can see the size of the grid cell here now. And we know there is a grid cell setting in the Effex scene. The global voxel size. Voxel is just a different word for a grid cell. You know, it comes from pixel, which is the, everyone of you knows what a pixel is. It's just a little cubical area inside of an image. And a voxel is just a volume pixel. That's how it is put together. You know, volume pixel, voxel. It's just the 3D version of a pixel. So we can imagine little cubes here that define the volume. And we can see that the size of the cube, of the voxel or grid cell is quite big. If I change now this value here, we can see when the voxel, the grid cell size becomes smaller, more voxels fit, more cubes fit into the sphere's volume. We can see that here now. They get more defined. The shape of the sphere is now much better approximated. And the lower I go, the better this gets, or the more exact, more accurate. And that's just, you know, it's just the resolution of the simulation. And of course, the lower the resolution, the longer it takes to calculate. So you should be careful what you use here, especially when you're working with the dynamics part. You can just play with that setting to see what's the outcome. But okay, and that's actually it. That's how a volume is defined. So you could use any mesh object that has an inside and an outside, and it can then be converted to a volume by specifying it here in the volume link field. Something I would like to show you, maybe we have some settings here. For example, I could set an inner offset like 50%, and you can see that we now get a ring out of the sphere. Actually, I could now create a mesher, for example, here, putting it inside the effect scene, and mesh this one, this volume. I just drag it in here like this, and we can see now that it meshed this one. And if I go inside here, we only have a ring now. You can see it here, that the inside is just inside of this ring, and we get a double sphere actually created out of it. So it's just a nice setting to maybe define different kind of emission sources or different kind of volumes with a simple slider. So that's how a volume works actually in Effex. What I would like to show you is different purposes for volumes. I just copied this volume here, move it out, I get a second sphere, and each volume is separate. So if I wanted to combine them, to get just one volume out of it, a union of it, so actually making what you know from Center 4D a Boolean operation, I can do that with the constructive solid geometry object here. So I just place it here inside of the effect scene, and I do have now two slots for two volumes actually that I would like to combine, and I could just drag and drop them in here, but at this occasion I would like to point you now to the candidate buttons. You may have seen them already. These are just some small buttons with a C on it, standing for candidate, and if I click on it, I get a list of candidates that fit into this link field. This is especially useful if you have complex setups with kind of complex hierarchies and you don't want to go through all of them just to find a certain object. You just click on this one, on this C button, and you get a list of objects, and you can also create new objects that would fit into this field. But I have these two volumes I would like to combine, so I choose volume and volume 1 here, and I can now maybe make them invisible, and I see now that I get a new volume, which is a combination of these. Because I'm in the union mode, so it unifies the volumes. I do also have the intersection mode, so I just get a new volume that has the intersecting part of the volumes. I also have the difference mode, so I can cut volume A from volume B or vice versa, like this. And I could then also mash it with the mesher. Just replacing it here using the constructive solid geometry. Well, we have a low resolution here, so we get the spiky triangles here at the edge. So what I could do now is, of course, I lower the resolution and get a much better approximation. Could also use a better algorithm here, which gives me more, gets me closer to the original spheres actually, or volumes. And as we can already see here, we can already see polygons here, actually the shape of the polygons. That's because really the mesh is used of the sources here. So if I create more segments, let's say 80 for each sphere, we also get a better representation of the volumes. I would like to show you one more, which is a nice feature for interaction with, for example, MoGraph. I don't know. Let's just take random here, and we have follow-ups for the randomized effector here, and I can now choose the effects volume follow-up here. I just tag that one, and I now get here a setting, say an effects volume. So I could simply drag, I don't know, let's just take that sphere volume and put it in here, and now I have a follow-up based on a mesh source, which is super fast because there's no extra additional calculations necessary to be done. The follow-up, the volume is actually there. Effex already created it, and you can use that volume now to create fall-offs from meshes and with super fast speed. It's just a nice feature for interaction with other parts or different parts of Cinema 4D. In that case, MoGraph. Any object that supports a fall-off will have the shape actually there. Well, so this is just the ground truth volumes. We will see them a lot of times in the following tutorials.